as industries mature and it's not enough to just exist in a competitive environment, we're beyond the point where in most places, just having a skate park or just having a climbing gym, like it's very quickly becoming a point where it needs to be something that you actually want to go to because competition is either already there or it's coming in some way or another, whether it's directly the same activity or just some other way of spending your time. It's a more competitive environment. And so specialization is required and necessary to actually have an identity and have something to say that people actually resonate with. So to me, specialization is actually really good business because, in a world of many, it's hard to sort of stand out. And if you're just kind of like in a market that isn't mature or there is no direct competition, first of all, there probably will be. And for most of the building projects, the building environments I create, you're talking about 5, 10, 15 or more years of having these projects. So thinking about it at the beginning to me is a worthwhile investment. Being a first mover to me is sort of less important than getting it right. Because again, to me, there is competition already. Whether it's just someone staying at home and doing nothing, like we're having to convince people and entice people to do something and get off their couch and make moves and come to be part of your community and want to come back. So in a more mature market, these both sort of look like burgers, but they're quite different in terms of who they're intended for. And so this is where specialization is maybe a really good example. And so if you look at different environments, this is one of my favorite places in Chicago that makes the burger on the left. And, everything about it feels right for what that is. From the vibe to the music, to the way they make the food, to the way they choose ingredients, to the line itself. This is a specialized environment where it's calibrated with the menu, the way they operate, and the environment that they put you in. It all just feels right and it all makes sense for the story that they're trying to tell. And it is not the story of the green burger on the right, which I'm also very interested in, but they're different stories that are calibrated properly for their intended user. And it's the same thing when we're looking at facilities these days. More specific training oriented facilities that are doing different things and using different equipments. The idea is that the audience is really what often matters, because if we can get the audience right, what we really have to realize is that the audience isn't just one age and one ability. And so when I look at Woodward as an example, they've gone from, having mega ramps and what they started noticing was that even in this image, there's a scooter. They started noticing that they had to actually start taking care of different groups of people. And so, when they start talking about getting rid of the mega ramp, it really is because they sort of realize like they need to also take care of groups of people like this. And so what did we end up working on together when we were putting projects together? A lot of it actually turned into things like this progression center. And the idea being that it's not just about huge mega ramps, it's about actually helping to bring more people in. And so a lot of the work that we did was really trying to get support and buy-in with visuals for this vision of progression. And it really turns into the features have to be calibrated for that vision and the activities evolve. Like what can we add? What do we need to remove? What do we need to hold on to? What can we get rid of? These are the questions I keep coming back to because it changes over time. And so the visuals that we put together are a way to get buy-in and have a conversation on a business level as well as a technical level, meaning like how much space we need for these different things. But also the technology changes. Over time, we've seen technology evolve a lot, from things like tread walls to adjustable walls to these LED boards, which are now often combinations of these things. And the way that we lay out facilities, in my mind and in my world, has also evolved. So that as we're starting to put more and more of these things together, we're actually being much more careful about how the technology and these different features are integrated with more sort of traditional fitness or climbing in this case, so that you can have like a fully modern, durable, contemporary facility that has enough of the sort of newer stuff, but also enough of the stuff that is just attractive to a first time person. So we've got sort of more traditional boards, Moonboard being sort of one of the early-ish versions of this kind of thing, to, board rooms, to the work being done by groups like Kilter to be testing things, and groups like Synergy, combining actually climbing and ninja, which is sort of what I was often getting at about combining different activities, to continuing to test sizes and options and what these things are. And so when we're putting facilities together, to me, it's far more about who the audience is and what sort of degree of specialization we need to introduce so that we can take care of the audience and also give them the right equipment, the right size ramps, the right type of adjustable walls, the right type of waves, like whatever the case is for whatever activity it is that we're putting together, having it calibrated so that the user experience at the end of the day is the right one for the audience that we're trying to take care of. And it does get tricky in the sense of, if you're making a facility that's trying to take care of everybody from the first time visitor to a professional, how do you do that? And that's why, to me, these things aren't one size fits all, because you can do that. You have to certainly compromise on different aspects or decide how much you're going to focus on those sort of ends of the spectrum versus the middle versus what part of the middle, or whatever the case is. And that's why it's always tailored to your vision. And that, to me, is exactly why these conversations are more nuanced than just a ratio of size to whatever, because it's not that easy. And especially with the cost of everything these days, it's really not that easy, because the cost of construction is so high that we just have to be so careful with every dollar. And that's why the process, to me, of developing an idea and turning it into an open facility, not just having it die on the desk somewhere in a pretty picture in a pile of other pretty pictures, that's why that is the process and the nuance of doing it successfully. And that's why, to me, that's what experience is. And that's why it's not just about drawings. It's not just about checking a box and being good enough that you exist. It's about, what is the specialization? Who are you speaking to? And how do we cater a facility? And then how do we operate that facility? And what do we offer? And then what do we put in the environment to suit that offer? You can see how it's this sort of like flywheel back and forth. It doesn't start any one place. It can start at any of those places. You could have a vision for the environment. You could have a vision for what programming you want to offer. I want to do training. I want to do kids. I want to do this. It could kind of start anywhere, but what happens next, just like playing chess, that's the game. If this, then that, then what, then what, then what, over a year, 24 months or more. And that's the reality of bringing a building project, an idea, a dream, building it and bringing it to life. So thank you very much for watching. I hope that's interesting and helpful, and reach out if you'd like to talk.